In my last video, I talked about the general details about Enfield's base and my thoughts and ideas for the first region, Valley 4. But with each new region comes a new factory, and when you get to Wuling, you have a brand new expansive base featuring fluids, a movable bus depot, and new machines to work with. Since both beta tests didn't give us that much info, this video will focus on what we have seen, and my theories of what we might be able to expect from the full release of the Wuling factory on the 22nd and beyond. The reason why I'm making this video comes from the idea that if you only look at the beta tests individually, the new factory can seem easy, incomplete, and possibly lackluster. Opinions like these are in many of the reviews I've seen, and are honestly completely understandable if you haven't played both betas. However, I think Hypergriff is really cooking here, but before I can explain, I'll quickly recap both betas' content. Starting with the most recent beta, along with the introduction of fluids, we get 3 new key factory buildings: the Forge of the Sky, the Reactor Crucible, and the movable bus depot. The Forge of the Sky uses compressed carbon and water to make Shiranite, a material core to many of Wuling's products and buildings. The Reactor Crucible is a funny machine that handles recipes involving both normal material and liquids, such as making healing solutions that can be bottled up later. The movable depot is just a nice quality feature that allows for more base customization, no longer restricting storage access to the edges of your factory space. There are other small quality of life changes as well, such as liquid compatible machinery, but those were the main features introduced in the Beta 2 Wuling factory. Honestly, that wasn't much, and the reason it felt like that is because as a small demo of a new system, it was never given the time or resources to scale with complexity. We only get 2 subregions worth of ore, 1 outpost worth of demand, and most importantly, only the first tier out of a multi-layered tech tree. Just like in Valley 4, as you unlock more types of machines and need to supply higher demand, the more you have to optimize your own base to fit those needs. In practice, to supply the outpost in Beta 2, you barely have to fill your base at all. Just look at how much space there is here, and it's no wonder why so many testers were disappointed with the limited content. But also clearly, this means it isn't the full story for Wuling. To fill this gap, I'm going to look towards Beta 1. During the first beta test, the Wuling factory was very different. Instead of Shiranite and the movable depot, we were introduced to a 4th ore, cuprium. Using cuprium in its initial steps used water. It required water processing to be both mined and refined, and the refining process created wastewater as a byproduct that we needed to treat. It was used in most high-end materials in Beta 1, including gear and the best factory producible healing items at the time. Where in Beta 2 we have these C-tier syringes, in Beta 1 with cuprium we would make A-tier syringes. This version of the factory took up more space, but I still had plenty of space to spare. Now, despite seemingly having disappeared in Beta 2, cuprium still maintains its presence here. Several signs around the world show cuprium next to the other ores, and I think it would make a lot of sense for the 2 beta-tested systems to come together on full release, like cuprium being introduced later in the region as the 2nd or even 3rd tier of the tech tree. From my 300 hours in the factory, there's not much interference between the 2 mechanics. They feel fitting as 2 halves of the Wuling whole. Or that is what I would say if I didn't have more theories and expectations for the factory's future. In the Valley 4 factory, using amethyst and sandleaf, you can create these crystal bottles that do functionally nothing at the moment. However, reading the description of the item states that some special fluids like certain acids can only properly be stored using crystal bottles. While we don't have access to fluids in Valley 4, Wuling absolutely does, and in both Beta 1 and Beta 2 have a distinct lack of a natural amethyst source. We have a regional import-export function in the game already, that actually got improved from Beta 1 to Beta 2. My theory is that on release, or shortly after, there will be some acid-based recipes in the Reactor Crucible or otherwise that would require the player to import and use these crystal bottles. I don't think the devs would have kept this item in both betas otherwise. Using one region's resource surpluses to make up for another's deficits fits so well with the system Hypergriff has set up, whereas Endfield Industries, you go around using the factory to improve the regions you visit. This idea has so much room for expansion in the future too, for possibly a 3rd region and beyond, and makes me really excited for what the devs cook up next. Now, I could be wrong. These are still just theories that will be checked on release, but I wanted to offer an optimistic look at the future of Enfield's factory system. While to some it can seem limited or simple right now, compared to other game formats, it has a lot more room for growth. Hypergriff's probably cooked even more things than I've mentioned today, and I'm all for it. Combined with features like factory-based events from my last video, the hints I've shown today make me incredibly eager to play Endfield for years to come. Thanks for watching.